On This Week in Sales, we're going to be taking a look at demand-based buying everybody, Forrester's new Waterfall, mining the CRM for insights, and much, much more. My name is Will Barron. I'm the founder over at salesman.org, and joining me, host of this show, sales legend, absolute legend, Victor Antonio. Victor, how's it going, mate?
It is going good, Will. How about yourself? What's new in your world?
What is new? Not much. We touched on EDM production last week. Some of that is starting to go ahead in the background. I'll probably have some stuff to share. I don't know how I'm going to share it, but I'm definitely going to start creating content within a brand on its own, and that'll somewhat feature into the salesman.org content, and maybe we'll talk about it on this show as well. But that's the only thing that's really up. Walter, the puppy, is doing great. We've got him on the whistle now. We're doing the book is called Total Recall. Any dog owners who are struggling with recall of their dogs, great book. Gives you a system, what I'm interested in and what we preach over Self-Dog, systematic framework of how to build recall into your dog. And literally the whistle now, he almost leaps and turns around and bolts back. He doesn't just go, I'll probably come over. And it was hilarious this morning. We spoke to, it's hopefully they'll never listen to this, right? But there's a bunch of middle-aged women that all walk the dog the same time I do, right? And they've all got somewhat young dogs and a couple of older dogs. And so Walter always edges over to them. So it's me and these 4 or 5 middle-aged women just chatting nonsense, because they're all very nice and they've looked after me and the puppy, right? But I've got nothing in common with them. And so they're just humoring me and I slow down their walks. I'm just getting in the way. Well, one of them walked off and their dog stayed with the pack, so to speak. And so she whistled, and it must be the same whistle that I have. Acme whistles are these like famous British dog whistles. And Walter bolted towards her. So I might have to suss out a dog whistle that is less common, so that he's not just running around these fields or these different places, following whoever's blowing. So there you go. That was the shenanigans this morning. But Victor, anything new with you, mate?
No. But I did want, I should have asked this offline, but you need to send me your address so I can send you one of my pens.
I'll do that.
I forgot to ask you for your address, and so send me that. And I think I got one for you. Well, I think I got one that you're gonna like that I built. And by the way, it's a one of a kind that I built. So I'm gonna send that one to you, man. And then you can get feedback on This Week in Sales. After you receive it, you can judge the pen. How's that?
I would love that. That is very nice of you, Victor. I will have it on the desk. We'll have it next to the GTR on the table, and we'll celebrate it. I'll use it to sign. Here you go. So regular listeners of all our content over at Self.org know this, that I'm building a business to be sold, right? Eventually, there's no rush. Revenue-wise, it's fine for me to live off in the meantime. But I'm strategically building a business that my face won't be on the front of all the time, so that it can be sold. That's like the end goal of all this, whether it's 5 years, 25 years, whatever it is. If you send me a pen of it, I will sign the contracts of the sale with your pen. How about that? That'll be full circle of this show and this moment. If it ever happens, this will be a really cool clip to go in the archives and be on the
That'd be cool, man.
The video where I'm going. I'm now transitioning over to another company. I'm now employed, have been self-employed was really fun, and being an employee is not all that fun. That's probably going to be the video that'll come at that point.
Maybe. But yeah, I will send that. So send me the address, I'll send the pen.
We'll get that done. Okay, so let's get into some sales news, and this is a big one. Demandbase buys both Inside View and Demand Matrix, strengthening their data services for B2B sales and marketing. This is from demandbase.com, which the website's currently down, so I assume that they're getting tons of traffic on this acquisition at the moment. Are you familiar with these companies, Victor? Demandbase,
I am not.
Inside View, and Demand Matrix.
I am not.
Okay, so Demandbase does essentially just all content, contact data across CRMs and finding outreach data and that side of things. Inside View, I've got a few notes here, is a firmographic data, or provides firmographic data on sales leads and accounts to augment CRM or marketing solutions. They can pull together finances, employee counts, market segments, news, corporate hierarchy, essentially a lot of the content that you would perhaps otherwise get from LinkedIn. Now, clearly, it's valuable to have an alternative to LinkedIn in case LinkedIn closes its doors, banning you from the platform. And so I think there's real value from Inside View. And the other company that Demandbase have purchased is Demand Matrix, that have technologographic. How do you say that word, Victor?
Technographic data services.
Technographic data services, which provide data on hardware and software used by accounts, as well as technology skill set trends and IT spend. So if you're selling into the startup, the technology space, clearly knowing what platforms that they're using, what software that they're using. If you're selling even perhaps web development or app development services, you can say, hey, we use Agile, we use whatever.io or this.jt. Your conversations are going to be more insightful, more useful, and you perhaps can lube your conversations and get the deals done quicker by knowing some insights there. So these three companies altogether, it's an incredible amount of data that buyers have, and so I'm really intrigued as to where all of this goes.
Yeah, well, the demand matrix, I've never heard of this, but I think what a brilliant idea. Right? To figure out what people are using on the technology side per company, what hardware, software, whatever they may be using, what platform. I didn't even know that existed. Got to be honest. Didn't know that existed. That's amazing.
I'm just going on their homepage now. I don't think they offer this service, but there is a competitor of theirs that does offer a service where I can't remember the brand name. I'll link it in the show notes over at thisweekinsales.com. And you just type in the URL of the website, the company that you want to prospect, and they will ping back on some of the data that they've gathered. And of course, they'll give you the top 3 bits of data, IT infrastructure, whatever it is. And then it's all blurred out underneath because they don't want to pay for the product, of course, which is more than fair. Demand Matrix don't offer that, as I can see on their website. But that data is incredibly valuable. Imagine going into medical device sales, going into a hospital and going, okay, well, they're using Karl Stutz's camera systems, Olympus endoscopes, Stryker, yada, yada, yadas. And then you go into a conversation not having to ask that information is at this point in time, it's so uncanny not to do that extra bit of discovery, to have that data in front of you, that would probably, and this might change over time as this information it becomes more ubiquitous and everyone has it at their fingertips. But right now, I think that would be almost impressive, potentially a manager with some budget.
Well, I'm also thinking about, like we sold back in the day before we had this type of data. You had to go in there, do the discovery, figure out what they have, or guess what they had in their. I sold telecom stuff, so I had to figure out what they had at their head end or their central office. But to have this information before you go in there, don't ask the frivolous questions. 2, you can actually prepare your presentation angle, how you want to approach that. This is really impressive. Wow. So if you're not selling, and you don't have this information, I think this would put you at a disadvantage if you didn't have it.
I agree. I agree. And maybe there's a training point here, Victor, of, are you familiar, or have you ever read any books on this idea of social engineering?
Social, is this cybersecurity, social engineering?
Yep. So you essentially using, rather than, most places get hacked because someone's made a mistake physically, a human error, as opposed to there's some nerd in a computer in a dark room somewhere with like crisp dust all over his fingers and a can of Mountain Dew hacking in somewhere. A lot of the attacks in the 90s, just as USB keys or USB memory sticks were coming more ubiquitous and everyone had them, was you just leave it in, you'd write a note on the side of it saying, hey, pay cuts or redundancies or something like that.
Something that would prompt them to want to grab it and plug it in.
So whoever it is, the receptionist, Miller's management, some other idiot picks it up, sticks it in the computer, and that's how you get access to the software on the organization. That's how you break through all their firewalls. So it's essentially, that is social engineering. And I've had a few people on the show to talk about social engineering from the perspective of how do you break into an account to find some of the information here that it seems Demand Matrix, for example, or Inside View could offer you. And I'll link to a few episodes of the Sales Podcast in the show notes. But it's really fascinating. And I've done this a few times as experiments. I've done it with Salesforce a few times before big conversations with different projects that we've done with them. And I just get random people's numbers, phone them, and a lot of people are more than happy. They don't have to do the deal that you're doing. They're just in this kind of similar space. They're more than happy to tell you who's the boss, what's going on, the inside politics. And it's probably an underutilized tool for B2B sales professionals when we're in this complex sales environment, which we'll touch on in a second. It's an underutilized tool just to ring a few people, essentially cold call them and say, hey, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just interested in what's going on in the organization at the moment. Have you got a few minutes? And most of the time, I've found that people will respond to that.
I think people have this natural response to the phrase help. Can you help me out? Mm-hmm. I need a little help. Like, yeah, what do you need? It's almost like that Pavlovian response, but I've never tied social engineering in the context of cybersecurity to actually being good at selling if you had all this information ahead of time. That's interesting. You think differently. Well, I like that. I like that. Speaking of thinking differently, how's that for a transition?
You ruined it. As soon as you ask for my approval on the transition, Victor, the confidence, it's like confidence transition, ask for approval.
I shouldn't have asked for it. Anyway, ZoomInfo CEO Shuck. Anyway, mining CRM's wasteland of information. What a beautiful phrase. Mining CRM's wasteland of information for insights. And this is an article written by Tiernan Ray. CEO Shuck. I should have put his first name down. Anyway, believes the company, ZoomInfo, can correct the mess that resulted from just a decade of investment in CRM systems. Following better than expected Q1 revenue and profit and raised outlook, ZoomInfo CEO and founder Henry Schuck spoke with CDNet. Here's what he said. When we talk to customers, Will, they invested a lot in CRM a decade ago. And they opened the door to people putting information in with no governance. And it became this wasteland of information, he says. Sellers didn't want to engage with the CRM because there was nothing interesting coming out of it. ZoomInfo, cue the Superman music, comes in and plugs into the CRM, and you can really turn CRM into a system of insight and away from a system of record. I think that was kind of slight towards Salesforce.com. Mm-hmm. The effort is as much about fixing what's broken with the CRM and other so-called systems of record of Salesforce and other vendors. Now, so I thought I'd highlight this one for two reasons. One, took a swipe at Salesforce. I thought was interesting. Basically saying, they're useless. That was my short version of what he said. But what's interesting, he said that it's a wasteland of information, these things called the CRM, and that they figured out the secret sauce to pull information, insight from these CRM systems. I don't know. I'm thinking it's an arrogant statement. I'm thinking it's an arrogant posture. What do you think?
I think stuff like this has to be backed up. So if I was to make a bold claim like that, Victor, the article might have only, you can only fit so much words into an article before people turn off, and clearly they're trying to grab headlines here, right? But if I was to make a claim like that, I would immediately be following it up with, hey, here's an anecdote, here's an example. We've put this out, and this is an example of an insight versus record of previous history of data. And clearly, if you're going to pull insights, they've got to come from an accurate record of previous transactions, conversations, and all that anyway. So you can't really have one without the other. So it's a bit of a slight without seemingly any evidence or anything to back it up.
What I found interesting as I was reading the article, one, there was no, let me prove it, social proof, as you pointed out. Here's an example. Here's how we do that. It seemed general fluff, but yet their numbers are going up. But I also think this is one of those George Orwellian things, this 1984 thing, that the evil empire in this case is Salesforce. So let's slam Salesforce just to get a little more attention. But there was nothing in the article that says this is why we're different. And I have a hard time believing that ZoomInfo has more Maserati, Tesla / AI power, or the ZoomInfo can actually outdo a Salesforce.com. I mean, I would believe Microsoft Dynamics if they came out with a statement like this. We can do it better. But ZoomInfo, I mean, how much have we heard about ZoomInfo?
ZoomInfo's a pretty big company.
Yeah. It is. Apparently the numbers are going up, but they're not the name. I wonder where they fit in the quadrant, a Gartner's quadrant. Let's see. Gartner's Magic Quadrant for CRMs. Let's see. 2021. I'm pulling up the data right now, Will. Let's see if I can find it.
Are you a member of Gartner, Forrester, or do you have any behind-the-scenes access to any of the unpublic content?
I am not, and I do not.
I might see... No, do I? They won't give me anything about me begging. But it would not be an unreasonable thing for them to give us access to some stuff. Like I get reports from HubSpot, Salesforce, some of the big CRMs, Pipedrive. I get sent stuff before it airs because they want to do podcasts on it. I don't know whether they want to be affiliated with you and I. I don't know if I'd want to be affiliated with you and I. But it would not be an unreasonable thing for them to start giving us access to some things. So we'll just talk about them more often, won't we?
Yeah, they should. We should reach out to them. By the way, I don't see them on the Magic Quadrant, is what I'm saying. I'm looking at, I don't know if I'm looking at the latest, I'm looking at the 2020, last year. You got in the leader row, you got Salesforce, obviously, Oracle, Adobe. Zoho is down there. It's visionary, niche player, Sugar CRM. I don't see it. HubSpot's over in the challenger. Ability to execute very high. They're in the challenger bracket. And so they're up there, but I don't see ZoomInfo.
Well, ZoomInfo aren't really a CRM. They're more on gathering data that goes into a CRM, up-to-date contact information, and that side of things.
So they're going to go into somebody else's CRM and pull out more information than the CRM folks themselves. So you're going to tell me that you've developed the magic algorithm that you're going to just plug into a Salesforce.com, and you're going to pull out some insight that those poor people over at Salesforce.com just have no idea that exists in there because it's a wasteland of information. I don't know. I'm calling out Henry Schuck. And I'm just calling him out. I'm like, dude, next time, if you're going to post an article like this, back it up a little bit. I mean, it may be true. The numbers are growing. Like better than Q1 revenue and profit and raised out for the next quarter. So they're doing something right. I'm just saying, maybe their marketing person, whoever wrote this press release, needs to up their game a little bit. But anyway, they're on the radar now.
Let's head over to research that is data-backed, right? Forrester debuts next-generation B2B revenue waterfall to help firms accelerate revenue growth. Now, I had no idea what the heck a B2B revenue waterfall was before I started reading the couple of articles that we'll talk about now. Are you familiar with what these are, Victor?
I am familiar with waterfalls. I didn't know Forrester had their own waterfall.
Sure. So for anyone who isn't familiar, imagine a sales funnel. Forrester then tells you industry averages of conversion rates between each part of the sales funnel so that you can compare your organization versus what the industry is doing, and you can see whether you're sucking, whether you're doing great, because clearly you want to focus on perhaps the biggest discrepancies there, and that's going to give you the biggest bang for buck in potential improvement. So Forrester's, and I'm quoting here from the article over at prnewswire.com, and we'll come on to a second one from Forrester itself in a second. Forrester's B2B revenue waterfall adds renewal, cross-sell, and upsell opportunities as new opportunity types in the target opportunity stage of the waterfall. Now, why they weren't included already is a bit weird to me. Seemingly, they're clearly important elements of any kind of sales funnel or waterfall or whatever we're calling it.
Well, I wonder when I first read the definition of waterfall, and this was when I was doing the research for my book, Mastering the Upsell, right? Which I've not published yet. and I was doing the research, I go, well, this is just another way of saying upselling or cross-selling. Yep. When you talk about waterfalls, I mean, that's all you're doing is how do you sell more to your existing customer base? So they've stated what? Referrals, upselling, cross-selling. Yeah, I mean, okay, that's a waterfall.
And should we, Victor, again, leaning on you here, experience in sales leadership and more executive positions than what I have done and probably ever will do we need separate strategies? Corporate visions have great content on this, but do we need separate strategies for upselling, converting competitor accounts, going after new logos or brand new accounts? Do we need separate specific strategies for each one of these?
I say yes.
I agree.
Because what happens is that it gets lost in the mix. Do you know what I mean? Because some people are just in the hunt mode, right? Some people are just like, client acquisition. They got that process down. But again, in the book, I highlight that one of the studies I came across was that you can increase your sales to selling to existing customers by up to 30%. That's big. That's huge. So I think it's a separate process. One could even argue there might be a different sales force that would manage that. So yeah, what do you think? What are your thoughts? How do you see it?
I totally agree. Again, customer visions. That doesn't sound right. Corporate visions. Corporate visions have a couple of books on these topics, and they make some really interesting points, again, from their own research. So, for example, if you're trying to upsell a customer, you've just sold them on what you've got is probably the best that they can afford. You've used all the budget, and you've cemented the deal in place. Now, if you come and try and upsell them, well, you're going to unsettle the status quo that you've set in place. You don't want a competitor to be able to come in and upset that status quo. So if you come in and upset it and they go, okay, well, maybe you're right. Maybe we do need to improve whatever we're doing or spend a bit more or change things. Well, have a look at the competitors as well. So they discuss different ways of going about not upsetting the status quo within a current account, but still being able to upsell them. One of the ways they do it is positioning your pricing and then immediately giving a big discount if they move fast on it so that you can essentially lift this rock, which is status quo, up from your customer, change the amount of value in the deal that's been exchanged and put the rock back down on it to stop competitors coming in and sweeping the account from you. So they've got a couple of books on this subject. But yeah, clearly you need different strategies and different ways of implementing all of this. And you're probably right. I think you might be on something there of different teams, different personality types. If someone's just, I've accepted that I've been somewhat aggressively or assertively sold to because the seller knew that there was an opportunity here for them to really help me. Maybe it's a different personality type that comes in more subtly, with more empathy, with perhaps even higher business IQ that comes in after the fact and says, hey, this was right at the time, but perhaps we need to do 1, 2, and 3 to move everyone forward kind of like 12 months down the line.
I agree. I'm trying to find the book. I read a book. They produced a really good book, and I can't find it. But it was something about the different conversations you should have.
Corporate visions. I think it's called The 3 Conversations.
Is it called The 3 Conversations?
It's either called that or that's the kind of subtitle to it.
I got to look it up. It's bothered me because it's a great book. So I just want to give it credit because it is a great book. I can't find it for some reason. I'm pulling up nothing on my Amazon and I'm looking under books and I just can't find it. Amazon is totally failing me today.
Why? What else has it failed you on?
By the way, there it is. Finally, the 3 value conversations. That isn't the one. Now you got me really. This book is so good. I mean, I just want to highlight because it's when you're upselling, it's a different conversation. I apologize. I should look for this. The expansion sale.
Yep.
It's called the 4 must-win conversations to keep and grow your customers. That book right there. If you want upsell, cross-sell, this actually structures the conversations for you in that business. So I love that book. It's a great book. I highly recommend it.
Good. We'll link to that in the show notes over at thisweekitsales.com as well. And we'll get into the waterfall in more detail in a second, but there's a few other data points that I thought was interesting that came from this article on prnewswire.com. First off, I'm quoting here, this year's Forrester B2B study shows that more than 80% of purchases now involve complex buying scenarios, and 95% of current purchases involve 3 or more people across 2 or more departments, and committee scenarios where I wish people would just speak in English.
Yeah.
We're
strategic.
This
purchases.
is a problem in communication from Forrester, from Gartner, from all these brands. They should do, I was going to say a dumbed down version of the content, but there is a real skill in simplifying things, right? It's something I'm focused on at the moment of some of our training that me and Victor I've been pestering Victor about, and he's been giving me thoughts and feedback on. But just write in plain English. I'm going to start that sentence again. 95% of current purchases involve 3 or more people across 2 or more departments, and committee scenarios where strategic purchases include multiple people and departments across the organization and require executive oversight. Forget that fact that I just shared. That sentence has 1, 2, 3 ands in it. That can't be good English, that, Victor, can it?
No. But by the way, do you know what, and I looked up real quick, do you know what the gunning fog index is?
No.
So gunning, as you're gunning for something, fog index is basically, you can actually put in your text and it tells you what level that language is connecting with. So for example, this is a 3rd grade level, 5th grade, college level. And what they found, and if you look at the gunning fog, by the way, you can take any text and toss it in there and it'll tell you what the index is. But 7th to 8th grade is the index. So here, I'm going to see if I can find the gunning fog.
I'm on it, Victor.
Okay, and I want to see if I can just pump it in there. There's got to be a website where you can just throw it in there because I've used it.
The gunning fog index for that sentence, that paragraph that I just shared, is 24.5.
Which is, that means you have 24 years of education experience. That means you went through college.
24 years of brain science went into understanding that rocket science, brain science, working for Tesla, NASA.
Give it a 24.
Yeah. Elon Musk is struggling with that sentence.
Yeah, that's right. So it's not just you. So the Gunning Fog Index is way high on that. Again, marketing people over, at Forrester, get your act together. But go ahead.
Okay, so let's move on to another post. This one's slightly more easy to digest. This is from Forrester.com, and this is entitled Follow-Up. Well, do I put that in there?
I think you put that in there.
This is entitled Why We Have a New Waterfall for 2021, Why You Should Care. And I added to the title of a follow-on for a previous story. So it kind of ruined some of the illusion there for the audience of the seamlessness of this show, Victor. This is from Kerry Cunningham, who is the VP and Principal Analyst over at Forrester. And they essentially are doing a new waterfall here because of two big change. One, buying groups, and two, opportunity mix. I'll touch on these very briefly, but I've added way more notes in the show notes of this episode of It This Week in Sales if you're interested in this. So there's two new defining elements of the waterfall. Buying groups, opportunity mix. Buying groups, so quote, prior to 2017, all of our waterfalls and virtually every waterfall or funnel model in B2B sales were organized to track leads from the top of the opportunities down from the top to opportunities at the bottom. The problem with this arrangement is that B2B organizations go to market, the buyer they are trying to attract is not a single person for each opportunity. So what they're saying is, which is obvious for anyone who's ever sold anything, for anyone who's teaching, training, doing whatever, and they see a nice funnel and they go, hey, we'll put this on a slide and we'll teach this to our sales team. It may not be so obvious to them, but anyone who's sold anything, you go into, you get a call from someone, you get a reports downloaded by marketing, someone finance gets a text you or whatever it is. Then you go through 27 people with the organization. It's going all over the place. It doesn't just go down, it goes back up. You've got status quo, you've got buying groups, you've got committees. It goes back 15 steps, and then someone just goes, hey, we'll just do it. Why are we faffing around? And it jumps 27 steps forward. They're trying to account for all of this within the new waterfall. Now, the problem with all this, Victor, and we're banging on about it, I couldn't actually find this waterfall online anywhere. This is the problem with this. They're banging on about it. It's coming. It's going to be exciting. But there's no diagrams, images of this waterfall anywhere. So I don't know how all this works in reality. But yeah, they're trying to account for that. And they're also trying to account for what they call the opportunity mix. So again, quoting, there's another factor our waterfalls have not yet accounted for, and it may be just as important in determining your overall performance of your organization's revenue engine. It's what we call the opportunity mix. For all but the youngest of startups, your revenue goals rely on converting net mix of new logos, existing customers, cross-sells, upsells, and perhaps most importantly, retaining existing customer deals. So we touched on this previously. They're trying to include the opportunity mix in the waterfall as well. Victor, is it possible to have some kind of diagram that accounts for all of this? Is what they're doing like a reasonable starting point to build something?
This is why AI exists. Yeah. In the actual CRM engines, right? Because we can't do this as human beings. We just can't do this. So, I mean, am I wrong in look? I feel like I'm the cynic today because I'm looking at this going, all right, we're just talking about funnels and you're just complicating how these funnels come about, how these things get into the funnel, and you're trying to track down, up, sideways, So, I mean, this is what we need a CRM system for with intelligence to tell us what is happening and basically where they're at. So I don't know what, I read through this and I go, okay, where are they going with this, Will? Where are they going with this? Because I'm like, so you're going to give me some type of, I don't know. Okay. Like the first, I guess here's my thumbnail, because I'm like, if I'm the audience, I'm thinking, okay, what are we talking about here?
Sure, okay.
So this waterfall, okay, so it's a way of basically, just think multiple waterfalls. It falls from one waterfall to the bottom, jumps into another waterfall to another waterfall, whatever. Or just put funnels in their place, because that's kind of what we're doing anyway. Yep. This is just a bunch of funnels in the funnels in the funnels. And so they're saying there are a lot of different buying groups and the leads can come from anywhere within the organization. Got it, check, register, put that into CRM, right? And then the opportunity mix, what we can sell them is, I'm interpreting this, right? New logo acquisition, existing customer cross-sells and upsells, and perhaps more importantly, retaining existing customers. This is nothing different than what we talked about. So I'm just having a hard time seeing what the big deal is on this one. I don't see anything on this one. Am I missing something?
Maybe not. I think why I found this interesting, and prerequisiting this in that I've not seen the actual funnel yet, and so all may be made clear when this funnel is finally announced, and we'll bring it up in a future episode when there's a visual that we can share. Right? It would be interesting to me if there is I'm intrigued as to how they visualize this on a page, on a screen, and the data points that they share of from X to Y, from point A to B to C. The whole point of this is that they're going to share the data of conversion rates going from one to the next. And that, to me, is what's interesting. Now, when you add more stuff to it, I think that there may be a way to describe this, where you add more stuff to something and then it becomes less useful than if you strip things away from it. And it may be like some kind of cognitive bias or some way of the human brain like wanting to overcomplicate and not realizing that it's becoming more difficult to understand. But yeah, it's I feel like that's kind of where we're going at with this. So perhaps we should just move on to the next topic. Maybe we should just
I guess I'm just thinking this is all scoring.
Yeah.
If you think about scoring a client, right? Depending on how many, in other words, even if the lead came from accounting, one came from the plumber, one came from the janitor, one came from the salesperson, we can score that. And then within that scoring, we can figure out what this creature looks like and what this creature has bought in the past for the upsell and cross-sell opportunities. It's the same, just scoring. I don't get the funnel thing. Anyway, all-in-one CRM software market, including top key players, Salesforce, Oracle, and so forth. Anyway, a new research report published under the title Global All-in-One CRM software market can grow into the world's most important market. It can grow into the world's most important market, which has played an important role in making progressive impacts on the global economy. That one needs to go through the gutting fog filter as well. The global all-in-one software market represents a dynamic vision for concluding and researching market size. Now, the reason I include this in here, let me just kind of back up. This is a new report that's out there, and it's looking at this all-in-one CRM software markets. What I liked about this, the title grabbed me because it's what we've been talking about, Will. Everything collapses within the CRM, right? So now they're putting a report together that says, look, let's really analyze these all-in-one packages. And some of the players are obviously Salesforce, Oracle, Applicor, never heard, SAP, Microsoft, NetSuite, Sugar CRM, Zoho, and I still don't see, Zoom Info you said is research. But anyway, I thought this was interesting. So it answers 3 questions, this report. So if you're a company, you want to get an all-in-one CRM software market report, this is where you go. And by the way, I got this over at goodnewsgum.com. Link will be in the show notes. But here are 3 key questions the report answers. What is the impact of COVID on global all-in-one CRM software market? Who are the top key players in the global CRM market, the all-in-one, and what are their priority strategies and development? And third question is, what are the types and applications of the global all-in-one CRM software market? Again, to buy this report, you'll probably have to pay a few $1,000s. I wasn't willing to do that just for the sake of this show. But if you want me to buy this, here's what you do. You go to thisweekinsales.com. You ask me for a number where you can send your money for us to buy it, and we'd be more than happy to do that.
Tell you what, Victor, this is not a good example of how we could do this. But we just bought a new coffee machine in the house. My partner just bought one for her birthday, right? I paid half of it. Well,
I gotta interrupt
Okay.
here. I keep hearing partner. Are we ever getting married here? I'm just asking a question.
It probably would have happened if it wasn't for COVID, and in the UK you could only have 8 people at a wedding.
Is she your fiance?
Oh no. So this has all been discussed. I think.
We've not gone down that road yet. So
I don't want
we're still
to be
partner.
engaged for like 5 years.
Okay, so we're in partner. Then the progression is fiance, then wife. I just want to make sure we got that. So we're still in the partner part of the spectrum.
So there's this is not interactive for the audience whatsoever, but there's definitely a difference culturally between getting married in the UK and in the US. So it seems like a similar service and a similar, from the outside looking, it seemed like a similar process. But I've got family over in Chicago, and so shout out to my family over there that definitely will never listen to the show as either. But they, a couple of their kids have got married in the past couple of years. And so I've been over there and been to the weddings and that as well, or the wedding, and it's a slightly different process. In the UK, you don't typically. In the UK, people tend to stay together longer, in a relationship as a couple before they get married. That seems to be one insight that I've seen. And then 2, whether it's me or again culturally, I want to get engaged, and then it seems to be like a year before you can get anything booked in. It's probably 2 or 3 years now, as all the venues are massively overbooked. So I don't really want to just be engaged for 3 years. What's the point? Engagement to me is just like a weird period between where you are and kind of where you want to be. So yeah, I keep calling her my partner.
Okay, all right.
I think we've mentioned on the show before, I don't mention her by name because she's a doctor and she doesn't want to, if we say anything ridiculous and insensitive, or myself in particular say that she doesn't want to be associated with it and have her career affected by it. So that's why I always refer to it as my partner.
Well, I just want to highlight something. This is a cultural difference, I think. I don't know if I even told you this. I got to make you aware of this. So when a man, or it could be a woman as well, uses the word partner, it's more associated that it's someone of the same sex. Mm-hmm. Just FYI.
So again, to me, maybe a cultural thing, UK versus US. Typically, if I say my partner is my girlfriend, people assume that we've been going out like for 3 weeks. So I've been with her like 7 years. So after like the first 4 years, I was like, well, she's not really my girlfriend. You know, she's not really like that bit on the side. She is like my partner kind of thing. So that's why I framed it up like that.
Yeah, you're pretty much married. You just don't know it yet. But go ahead. Go ahead. By the way, that was the cultural section / personal insight section of thisweekinsales.com.
So I'm totally lost of where we are now. So I'll go on to the next topic. You asked me a question then and then totally cut me off of where the question was going. So we'll move on to this. Now, we don't have time for this, but I thought in this show to do it in its entirety. But I thought this could be an interesting feature to do in the future, Victor. We could have, if we're going to have Culture Corner, we could also have something that rhymes with debate. We can have a debate section and we can both pick a side and we can debate one way or the other, because I feel like you're a pretty strong negotiator. I feel like I'm a strong negotiator. I feel like that could be interesting for the audience. This came about from an article over at mdm.com where a panel of quote-unquote experts debated who will win the battle for sales, man or machine. The article title was Who Will Win the Battle, Man versus Machine in Distribution Sales. And essentially they got a panel of individuals. I think it was done over email as opposed to in person because they weren't really engaging with each other. They were just giving their hot takes. But they answered 3 questions. Round 1, who owns the sales experience? Round 2, can machines manage complexity? And number 3, which route produces the smoothest sales cycle? So Victor, do you want to just quickly do this? Should we quickly see if we can debate this in 3 or 4 minutes? Who do you want to be?
Let's do it.
Do you want to be on the side of man or on the side of machine?
I'll be a gentleman. I'll let you choose first.
I feel like you've got to be the author of AI sales books and having a clear interest in that. I think you've got to be machine.
Machine. I was going to go for machine because machine is definitely all 3, hands down, no debate. Let's end this thing right now. Quick knockout, 10 seconds, machine.
So so the first question, who owns the sales experience? How can a machine own an experience of humans?
It can actually produce the content without the use of actual individuals. It probably can produce content more effectively than actual individuals.
Are you sure about that? I'm not sure that is true. That is a statement that there seems to be no evidence of. We're not reading books. We're not reading content. We're not watching videos created by machines just yet.
So there's products like Quill. If you go to Quill.com, Quill can actually produce articles for you. So if you feed the machine enough general information, it can produce articles. It can probably produce multiple articles. It can go out to the internet and search and build articles. The actual human can't keep up with that. They just can't. That's my argument. Go.
It's irrelevant. I could produce articles. I could produce 1,000 articles
not like
a day,
machine.
But if they're all
not
crap
like a machine.
and nobody cares...
Not like a machine. The machine can probably produce high quality article based on, let's say...
Even you're undoing in your own sentence there. You said probably. A machine can probably do X, Y, Z. I don't feel like you're confident in this argument, Victor.
I'm comfortable in the argument but if you ask me if can I do it today, are you asking me today or within, let's say, 3 years, 5 years?
Oh, so if you're going into the future, then this has already fell apart. This is terrible.
Wait, I'm asking you because there's a timeline here. I should have asked that question. What's the timeline? If you say today,
you have to ask the timeline, Victor. Then machines, it's done. It's over.
No, it's not done, because right now, how many sales are being lost because content providers aren't providing the right content? It's totally misaligned. Sure. They can't analyze the data points. If you were to separate the individual from the machine, you get no access to the CRM. So if you're going to be the actual individual, you want to own it as the man or the woman, you can't use the machine because that would contradict your argument. So where would you get your content? You go on the internet, boom, that's a machine. So you're getting your information from a machine. Okay, so that's what you're telling me already. So you're dependent on the machine already, and you're saying you own the experience. No, you don't. Who owns the algorithms? Machines do.
I think I can do a better job on the phone engaging with a potential customer than a machine can spamming someone with articles written on the back of content written by humans.
We've talked about this in the past. People are going online and buying things by themselves. They don't need the individual. So you can cold call all you want. While you're cold calling, let me tell you what your client's doing.
I didn't say cold call. I said I can have a conversation with someone.
You're on the phone. While you're on the phone.
with a talented and skilled individual over spammy, robotic, algorithmic-based content or any day of the week. Let's move on to the next point here before...
Wait. Just one more thing. you're having a conversation with that individual, right? You're on the phone. You're having a conversation. But remember, that client has already done 80, 90% of the customer journey. And guess where they got their information from? A machine, the internet. So you're basically having to deal with a person who's been conditioned by the machine.
Yeah, but who wrote the content?
Oh, the machine.
No, that's
the machine.
So fine. So if you're going all in on this, which is fine.
I'm going all in, man. I'm going all in.
They've consumed content, terrible content, algorithmic driven, with no human touch, with no emotion, no empathy. I will happily go up against that. I think that's my competitive advantage as a salesperson in the age that we're living in that I go, okay, so you read all that, but you're probably not convinced, are you, sir? Yeah, it was all a bit weird. It didn't really make any sense because there's no context to any of it because it was written by Victor's really shitty algorithms. Hey, by the way, do you want me to spend 5 minutes on the phone just going through a few things and seeing what you really need and seeing what the gap is from where you are to where you want to be? Oh, that would be really useful. That would be really helpful. And so I can thank Victor for perhaps getting this sales process going and doing a little bit of my job for me, and then I can close the deal and take the money home.
I think this would be, just stepping outside of this example we're doing, this would be really interesting if you set up like a salesperson and a machine in a separate room, and then to go begin, and then calculate at the end of the day what each one did. That would be fascinating.
There would be some products, to be fair, that auto creation of content, just keeping attention for a long period of time, maybe B2C products or lower priced, just disposable or commoditized products. There might be an argument one way or the other, but I feel like it's going to be difficult to compete with someone on the phone who is skilled. So there was 2 other questions here, but we'll skip through these. We'll carry on with the conversation and move the show forward. But what do you think about that as a feature, Victor? And audience listening to this, write us at thisweekinsales.com if you feel like that would be an interesting thing for me and Victor to just debate something ridiculous each week, somewhat related to sales. What do you think?
Take a posing. I like the idea, actually. I like the idea. It'll force us to be more, I guess, better negotiators, fortify our thinking, and make sure we present a strong case on each side. Yeah, I like that. But this one, can the machines manage complexity better than the humans? Of course, yes. Which route produces the smoothest sales?
That is not conclusive. Is that conclusive?
By the way, which route produces?
Do you feel like your car can drive better than what you can right now?
My car can drive better? No, not yet.
So, by the way, what you just said then was that machines can manage complexity better than humans is incorrect.
By the way, in the context of sales, I say yes, because it's that complicated. There's too many data points. There's too many signals in the machine. The average salesperson can't figure out what's what.
I'm going to go super cliche here, Victor, and I think this ends the whole conversation. When a computer is selling to a computer, what you're saying makes total sense. When my big meat sack is selling to another big meat sack, the complexity is almost becomes irrelevant because the person that you're selling to, they're so ambiguous, don't really know what they want. The budget might be there, might not be there. You need a level of empathy. You need to be able to communicate on a human-to-human level. It's so cliche, and I almost feel like gagging. I'm feeling a bit sick at the back of my throat as I'm saying this.
I'm feeling sick.
But this human-to-human selling kind of process, that you can't underestimate that when we're talking about all numbers and data and whatever. When you pick up the phone to someone, whether you pick it up, a computer picks it up and artificially talks, and they go, well, I ran over my dog this morning, I'm a bit miserable. There's no data point that can help you out with that. Not yet, anyway.
I'm going to agree with you that, I'm going to give you a little bit, just give you a little daylight here, is that humans can have a better conversation with other humans. I'm not going to argue that. But I am saying that if we step back, zoom back, and look at how people are buying, the human is being squeezed out of the actual process. That's what I'm saying. And in the end, the machine, Cybernet, will win.
Yeah, well, we can project it into Terminator, but we're making assumptions there as opposed to using actual. I like to, I don't know about you, Victor, I like to base my arguments, negotiations on fact and data and the real world. So the audience can make it. What we should do is ask the audience, we'll do a poll on the show notes page and ask the audience to vote who won the debate.
Okay, I'm all with that, but I think I won because machines are just going to be that much smarter. Now, let's go to the culture corner because this ought to get interesting right now as we wind down.
Trump has essentially created his own personal Twitter page. And so I've got no horse in this race, so I'll let you lead with any political elements to the conversation. I'm happy to talk about politics. But clearly Trump just got banned from every platform just in an instant, which is insane. And that's a conversation I'll ask you a few questions on perhaps in a minute or two, of whether you feel like social media companies are big enough to be managed, judged, and like litigated as utilities. Should Twitter be able to just go, okay, you built this massive audience, you've given us a ton of value, you have a voice as an individual, but not on our platform. And then Facebook goes, well, Twitter kicked him off, or kicked whoever off, we'll do the same. And this all came about, this became really clear to me with, are you familiar with Alex Jones and InfoWars?
Yeah, of course I am.
So I don't watch the content. He's got a sick studio. So I watched some of his stuff just to see what he's going on with the studio, because he seems to have unlimited budget to spend on production. And he's been on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he's been hilarious on the different Joe Rogan podcasts that he's done. So again, politics and all that kind of thing aside for me, because it doesn't really mean anything to me, American politics, other than to just watch it from afar. He was the first one where it was just all of a sudden Twitter banned, Facebook banned, YouTube banned. I think YouTube might have been the first. Banned from iTunes. Even Apple got involved. No more podcasts. He got buried in Google search results because he was then affiliated with whatever he became affiliated with, however they framed him up. Is that disturbing? We'll come on to Trump's new kind of content idea in a second, but does that worry you, Victor, from an American citizen, seeing these American companies just banning people, just deleting them off the internet?
Yes. Alex Jones is, let's just say, he's a little out there sometimes. You know what I mean? He is entertaining. He is out there, but who sets the standard for who should be banned and who should be banned? What's the standard? He exaggerates. He has a lot of conspiracy theories, right? But who determines? Because, on the left, I'm sure if we dig deep enough on the left, being, somebody who's opposed to Alex Jones, we'll find some other conspiracy theorists. And they're all over the place. But that's part of free speech, isn't it? That you can choose who you want to listen to. And so I think they've revealed themselves as being biased over and over again, just because, you banned the president of the United States. Now, if your level of, let's say what do you call that, what your measure, where you this is the cutoff, is that he lied or stretched the truth, then you might as well ban every politician. Just start. Joe Biden has already told so many lies, I've lost count. But nobody's, again, kicked him off Twitter. And so I think, and again, I'm zooming back, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, I'm saying it doesn't matter. This is a dangerous, I hate to use the cliche, slippery slope, but this is dangerous when you start doing stuff like this. This is fascism. And I hate to throw out the word that, but it is to some extent. It's like when you start determining who can talk and who can't talk, that's not cool. So whether you're banned or shadow banned was the other thing that's going on in the U.S. And by the way, I saw it on my feeds. Leading up to the election, people I used to follow, I just didn't see anymore. And then after the election, poof, they popped right back up. It was really interesting to see. But anyway, that's my take on this.
For sure. Some of this, so I have two thoughts on this. One, these big companies should be considered essentially utilities at this point, rightly or wrongly. Like, I never use Facebook. I think it's a terrible place to spend your time. They're just sucking attention from you. We talked about it on previous episodes of This Week in Sales, where they're just taking your attention, bundling it up with millions of other people, and then selling it to literally the highest bidder and the auction system that they have for the ads. That is weird. So I spend basically zero time on social media. On my phone, I've got Reddit banned, blocked. I can't get on there. I've got Twitter blocked. I've got I can't even get on LinkedIn on my phone, and I refuse to install the app on there as well, because those 3 or 4 seconds routinely throughout the day is essentially, I don't think there's a big conspiracy behind it or anything, but they're essentially programming you to the jumping into your dopamine cycles, and it's becoming an addictive process. And it's not, nobody needs to spend that much time, the average person time that they spend on these platforms. So with all that aside, they should be regulated as utilities from the perspective of, if you're going to say you can't turn off someone's electricity, you can't turn off someone's water because of their views, you shouldn't be able to do that on social media. If I don't want to follow you, I just unfollow you. It should be that simple. Now, part of the issue with some of this as well is it used to be a reverse chronological timeline, right? You go on Twitter, you go on Facebook, your friend posted because you're just about to go out for a meal, you're just about to go and do this, and they posted, and you look at it, and on the timeline, you see it in order of when things were posted. Then Facebook go, oh, hey, we can insert a ton more ads, get a ton more attention on what we want attention on, whether it's a positive story, negative story, push attention one place or another, by not having that chronological element to our timelines. And you can never convince them because they lose so much money if they went back to a chronological timeline. But that would solve a lot of this issue with echo chambers and, uprest and people getting angry about things. Because if you're not awake at 3 o'clock when Barry's getting mad because he's locked outside his house and he's saying all this ridiculous stuff, then you're probably not going to see it because it's going to be buried by the next day. So they're my 2 thoughts on this.
Yeah, I don't think it should be regulated as a utility. That would be very anti-capitalist for me to do that. But I think there is something called, and I was looking up to be sure when I had this conversation with you, there's something called they're protected under something called Section 230 here in the U.S., which means they can't be sued, right? And so there's a wonderful article, and I didn't give you the link, but I'll give you the link so we can put it in the show notes, where it talks about how lawmakers now, on both sides of the aisle, are saying, hey, if these guys are going to start curating content, who can talk, who can't talk, then it's no longer falls under the articles of Section 230 where they're supposed to be agnostic. In other words, they've moved from publisher to now make opinion makers. And so now you got these politicians, smart Democrats are saying, wait a minute, they're using it against Republicans now, but they could always use it against us. And so I think it'd be interesting for them to remove some of that protection. So now, if they want to play the agnostic role, they can play. But as soon as you deplatform, I can sue you. Because now you got to prove that the reason you deplatform didn't violate my First Amendment rights. And this is what I would love to see, for them to remove that so you can sue a company like Twitter. And then they would have to prove how and why you deplatformed them. And I think that would stop the silliness. They'd probably say, you know what, let's not deplatform anybody because we're going to just generate lawsuits every day. And I'd rather that would be the market response as opposed to any type of regulation. That would be what I would want.
The problem with that, though, Victor, I don't know how. I don't want to undermine what you're saying. I don't know how interested you are in this subject. I'm pretty interested in it, right? So I'm not I'm not trying to debate it with you. I'm chatting with you about it. But the problem with that is then these brands, these organizations go, okay, so we're going to get sued. So we're now going to even more dramatically cut people, censor people, cut back on what people can and can't say. If someone's got a post that's doing really well, that's somewhat controversial, we're going to have to delete it before someone sues us against that specific post. So by
by the way, I think you're looking at it wrong. If you play the agnostic role, you say, put whatever you want on the platform.
Correct.
That's the way it should be.
Correct.
Like that, they don't get sued. That's Section 230, right? We won't sue you because you're just a publisher. But as soon as you start deplatforming, then no, you can be sued. I think that's the argument I'm making. I don't know if it's the same argument, but I'm just saying because they're not doing that anymore, you know what? It's time to get sued.
But
and
so
that would correct.
If they re-regulate them as essentially it's the difference between a newspaper and the post office, right? This is the best analogy.
Correct.
Newspaper posts opinion pieces. Hopefully they are truthful, or everyone has cognitive biases that are pushing people one way or another. But if you look, I won't name anyone specific paper because I'm sure they're all biased in some way. But if you compare that to the postal service, well, the postal service will pick up the mail from the Nazi sympathizer and they'll ship it to whoever, and they're not looking at it, they're not debating it. Well, right now, social media companies are this, the postal service. They will pick up your post, they will share it on the platform, as long as it's not totally egregious, and there's a few rules and regulations that go beyond the realm of free speech, right? You can't say, hey, let's all meet in the car park and beat up Deborah because she's an arsehole. You can't post things like that. That's outside the realms of free speech. Well, when you start to regulate these companies as publishers, which I think is what you're alluding to here, so that they can be sued, well, then Facebook, to prevent being sued, are going to cut people even more regularly from the platform. Because cutting people from the platform, you sue them, and they go, well, we're a publisher. You don't get to write for the New York Times. We choose not to have you on our platform there because we don't want the New York Times to be, accused of this, being influenced.
I see what you're saying.
So you can only have one or the other. It's binary. You can either have everyone on the platform, and this is where the debate lies, right? Of should
Correct.
they be regulated like a utility, like the postal service, like gas, like electricity, in which case you are forced to accept everybody, which is what I'm for. They should be utilities. Or should they be forced to react like a publisher where they can get sued, in which case, if they're going to get sued because Annex Jones is on there and he comes off, well, they're going to just get rid of whoever they want, anyone controversial. And they
by the way,
they can push their own agendas.
Based on how you described it, I would agree with you. I would rather have it be a utility, a pure utility, right? And just do it that way. I think that's the best way of doing it. I mean, I think, I think there's something like Facebook is going to determine. I think you have it here, right? The oversight board.
Sure. So Facebook's oversight board is going to, this all came from the story of Donald Trump. He's basically started a page on his website, donaldjtrump.com/desk. And essentially it's his tweets. So if you are a fan of Donald Trump, if you want to continue his essentially Twitter content, it's every 25 minutes or whenever he posts, go to donaldjtrump.com/desk and you can now find it there rather than on Twitter. Now, we'll talk about it in a second. Trump has been teasing his own social media platform for months and months and months now. And there was who is it? Mr. Miller. I think he's part of Trump's, I guess, not campaign group anymore, but whoever is behind the scenes. He says, quote, "We'll have additional information coming out on that front in the near future with regards to his own social media platform or news platform, whatever it turns out to be." But yeah, Trump has his own essentially news desk now, his own Twitter. And this is on the back of and in the face of Trump's oversight board, which will be announcing its decision on whether Trump is to be permanently banned, because from a lot of these platforms at the moment, he's currently suspended, whether he's going to be permanently banned from Facebook in the next couple of days or so. So yeah. So what do you think about Trump just going his own way? Does he have a big enough audience to just that people will just go to his own website and sod Twitter? We don't need that. We don't need him to publish on there anymore.
To me, I find that like irrelevant. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but it doesn't matter to me. I'm still back to the issue of you banned the president of the United States from your platform. I mean, just that thought should just chill anybody. You know what I mean? And so, and again, a lot of it had to do because he was calling the elections fraud, right? And so what's happening now, I don't know if you're following the news, but what's happening in Maricopa County out of Arizona. Did you hear about this? It's really fascinating. Will, by the way, politics aside, it's really fascinating. It's what I think is the largest county in Arizona. They're saying that should have gone Trump, right? So investors got together, pooled money, rented out a stadium, and now they have the audit going on live. If you go to a website, I think it's called AZ. You want to look at it. It's really cool. AZ audit, like Arizona, audit.org. They got 9 live feeds. And what they've come up with is a fascinating, now they're doing a recount, a full recount, not a sample, a full recount. But what's interesting is how they set this up, which I think is going to impact the future of voting here in the U.S., and I bet you it'll be over there. And that is, if you look at the videos, it's kind of cool. They take the ballot, they put it on this scanner, and the scanner rotates around so 3 people look at it. Nobody touches it. The scanner looks for watermarks, signature and everything, and all that's stored in a database. And so they're doing everything to stop this count. They're doing everything to stop this count. They're even ignoring it. They were first yelling about it. Now they're just ignoring it. And so I think they'll be done in another week or 2. Now, Trump lost by 11,000 votes, a very significant state, by the way, pivot state. And so it'll be interesting to see. If he still loses that, then I think the question of voter fraud, everybody should just shut up. Everybody should shut up. But I got a feeling they might find something else. And I hope to be wrong. I like to think that the elections were fair, But this will be interesting. But the fact that they've been so ferocious on stopping this count is very interesting. But getting back to the question about I think deep platforming people is just wrong.
Because let's pull it back to sales here for a second, Victor. Because what happens, right? Are you familiar with Corporate Bro and his kind of comedy LinkedIn content?
Oh, yeah. I saw he did I do remember because he did something on Grant Cardone, I think. He did a Corporate Bro thing.
He does a lot of like piss taking of individuals, brands. Because
he does.
My partner was like, "Hey, have you seen this dude?" And he was doing one taking the piss out of Peloton because she's got a Peloton, right? She's got a Peloton bike, and she's nothing to do. And I was like, "Yeah, I've chatted with him kind of once or twice on Instagram on different things, and I've gone back and forth with him a couple of times." She's like, how do you know him? And she was immediately like, who's this celebrity that you've been hanging out with? Well, for context of all this, what we're talking about here, and to drag it back to the kind of, I guess, the real world that we live in, right? You and I, Victor, the audience, he got banned from LinkedIn because it was a parody person. It wasn't an actual individual on LinkedIn creating content for, to whatever you're using LinkedIn for. There's multiple reasons you use LinkedIn. It was obviously a parody character. And he built maybe had 20,000 followers on there. People really enjoyed his content. And so all hell broke loose when he was trying to get his profile back. So this doesn't just affect Donald J. Trump and Alex Jones and all these actual celebrities, right? And Corbett Rose is on the way to being a legit celebrity. I like his content. But it affects just random people. Why have you just spent 5 years building your LinkedIn profile up? You're doing a ton of business through it. Perhaps your boss gives you bonuses each month because you're driving leads and clicks and you're sharing articles for the company. And so you get a little bit of bonus or a commission, or you're doing with what Daniel Disney does. He's built a massive audience on LinkedIn and a few other places as well, right? I do a show of him called Social Selling Show, which you can find over at salesman.org. What happens if he just gets banned? His whole business is just essentially taken from him overnight. So these things can affect just mere mortals as well. This is why I wanted to touch on it. I think it's interesting that Trump's clearly trying to go his own direction and be, F you kind of social media companies. But for the average person, we've got to play within the rules.
Yeah, I think they're amping his martyrdom. He's become a bigger martyr post facto. I think he's bigger after the fact than he was during, because of all this deep platforming. But anyway, I want to talk about something positive. So I'm watching this video by Daniel Goldman on focus, and the link is attached in the show notes. And what I love about it, here's a phrase he had, and the whole thing's about focus and attention. And he quoted Herbert Simon, Nobel Prize winner, who said, "Information consumes attention. Hence, a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention." And it was to your point, what you said earlier, right? You got so much stuff coming in, you don't know what to focus on anymore. And anyway, first of all, the 1 hour and 18-minute session is fantastic. But I think this whole thing about information consumes attention, I tie it into sales this way. Customers have so much information that it's hard to grab their attention. And there's something in here about more information does not help you make a better decision in many cases. Thoughts, Will.
So what you're saying is, rather than AI, a machine just dumping more crap on an individual, what we need is a human touch of someone who can go in, see the connections, line the dots up, and just wrapping up the debate that we had earlier on, in that you need humans to do this, and this is our competitive advantage in the marketplace. Is that what you're saying?
You're absolutely wrong again. You're absolutely wrong. Because what is that the machine can curate better than the human being. So I win the debate again. The human cannot curate like a machine can. So a machine, let's go back to Mr. Zoom Info on the wasteland of information. That wasteland of information was caused by human beings. It is machines who are now cleaning it up. Notice, the plug-in to the CRM is not a human being. The plug-in is an algorithm, i.e. a machine. I rest my case.
It's not an unreasonable argument that a computers or software essentially can curate things. So I'll give you that, but I think we're both in agreement on. I think you just picked the wrong side. I think you would have been agreeing with me on the human element of all this.
I think you picked the wrong side, but we'll leave it at that. I just had to one-up you.
Well, you don't one-up at anyone when you're incorrect. You're just digging a deeper hole. But this reminds me. I've not seen the video. I'll watch it probably tomorrow morning. When I'm on the Peloton bike, I'll watch this tomorrow morning. But yeah, it reminds me of Cal Newport and his book Deep Work, and he talks about the future of essentially living in the internet age is what I'm debating here with you, flippantly. I think we're both on agreement with a bunch of stuff here, but the people who can sit down and do actual work, people who aren't on social media, bounce between this, bounce between that, who can read 3 or 4 books on a subject and have an intelligent conversation on the back of it. Things like, it's not rocket science. People who can really focus on the things that matter, and maybe AI and machine learning can help highlight what we should be focusing on. But people who can really focus at a deep level, they will have a massive competitive advantage, not just in sales, just in the workplace in general. And all of these roles where It used to be that you'd sit and spam phone calls or you'd spam emails. They are slowly getting eaten up and people are getting chewed out by AI machine learning. And so this idea of focus, this idea of deep work, which I think is on the similar kind of wavelength here, this is going to be increasingly important and valuable. And I listening to content like this. I think the show started off in a bit wishy-washy. I think we've ended it on a high here. But listening to this show once a week, if you're in sales, B2B sales specifically, if you are in sales ops, if you are a CRO, if you are in this space, this via me and you coming together and sharing articles, posts, information, our own anecdotes, analogies and metaphors and storytelling, some of the things that we've done throughout this show and previous shows. This is an hour of essentially deep work. If you can listen to this while you're at the gym, while you're driving to appointments, you're going to learn more from this, just subconsciously going to the back of your brain, that is going to allow you to have deeper conversations and allow you to have more insightful conversations with your customers and people within your organization versus what most people do, which is they're on TikTok and they're just bashing through 15-second videos because it's addictive and there's flashing lights and there's girls with the boobs out, whatever it is. Whether people are watching, we'll go down that route while I've started. People are like addicted to porn. People are addicted to social media. You listen to crappy music, watching crappy TV shows, watching Netflix, and just having your brain melted by really terrible TV that is literally designed to keep you on the sofa. Sesame Street, I don't know if you're familiar with this, aware of this. Sesame Street were the first TV organization to use eye tracking with kids. And they tested from the very first season, every scene, eye tracked with kids. Any scenes where the kids would look away from the telly, it's gone, it's done, and they replace it with something else. They reverse engineered this ability to keep masses of attention for kids, and they're doing it for humans now, and they do all this with Netflix original TV shows as well. If you can get rid of all that, listen to, I'm not saying this is the best show on the planet, there's probably other shows that you should be listening to as well, but if you're in the sales space, I think this is somewhat valuable, right? Humbly, listening to stuff like this, reading books on topics adjacent to what you're selling, that you're the industry that you're working in, being able to have a conversation without pings, bleeps, and things going off, and really diving into topics that are going to be valuable not just for you but for your customers. That's deep work, and that's really going to separate you from whether it's my age, Victor's age, or a 16, 18-year-old who's on the come up, who's looking for a sales job right now, their first or second role, who's just addicted to social media. There's going to be the gap between these two types of individual. It's going to just become a canyon over time. And you have people who are addicted to just wasting their lives, and people who are hopefully kind of pushing in the right direction. Victor, that was a bit of a rant. Do you agree with that?
That's okay. I agree with all the above. And I want to put it just a fine point on it because it tied back to Daniel Goldman, and you highlighted something that there is this gap between attention, deep work, right, and lack thereof. Now let's tie it back to sales as we close this thing out. Because one of the things I think Daniel Goldman talked about indirectly, it wasn't talking about sales, but I could see how it applied to sales, was this deep work, this focus, this attention is a type of attention / deep focus that customers want. So when you're talking to them, you're in there. You're not thinking about something else. You learn. It's a discipline you develop in terms of, I need to really listen to what they're telling me and be in the game, in the moment. And like I said, what I love about the video, he talks about different strategies for trying to stay mindful and aware of a conversation, which is, as you're pointing out, is that something that's becoming more difficult for a lot of people to do because of all the bells, whistles, and flashing lights.
I shouldn't talk about mindfulness, meditation. Is there anything else? Is there any parting wisdom you want to leave the audience with, who perhaps, to the best of our wanting them to watch a video like this, are never going to watch it? Is there any one takeaway from the video for salespeople who are listening, who want to increase their ability to focus and attention on a customer?
Daniel Goldman was the first person that I've heard that broke empathy down into 3 parts, which I'd never thought of. And this is in that video. And so I'm not going to tell you what the 3 parts are because I want you to watch the video. But when he broke down empathy, I was like, okay, I've never looked at empathy that way. And it was kind of like, it made me actually just pause the video and go, okay, that was different. And it applies to selling and it applies to relationships. And so watch the video. It's a great video. I'll leave you guys with that teaser. It was so wrong of me, but there it is.
Amazing stuff. We'll link that video in the show notes to this episode over at thisweekinsales.com. Victor, anything to wrap up on, or we're going to wrap things up there, mate?
No, as you know, I'm going through my spiritual journey of trying to figure out what my next step is in terms of content, books I want to write, stuff like that. So I will, after this podcast, I will continue my journey as I pointed out, my nomadic journey of wandering the wastelands of what am I going to do next. That's going to be exciting. We got the Outbound Conference coming up, by the way, next month. Super excited about that. So go to outboundconference.com, discount code Victor100. Would love to have you there, Will. It would have been great if you were there. We could have hung out.
I'm still waiting for the invite and the plane tickets. I don't even know if we can travel, honestly, at the moment. The UK just introducing like a traffic light system. I think if it's a green light, which probably will be the States, you don't need to quarantine on the way back in. I think you just got to do a test either side of the border. Orange light, you've got to quarantine in your own house, and a red light, you've got to quarantine in a hotel at your own cost. So when you send me the plane tickets, I'll suss out what traffic lights we're on, and we can suss that out.
Keep staring at that mailbox. It may show up one day.
Well, with that was Victor Antonio, sales legend. My name is Will Barron. I'm the founder of salesman.org, and you've just been tuning into This Week in Sales.